Adelina had been planning her 12th birthday party for months. She wanted it to be perfect, a sleepover with her closest friends in the old family farmhouse. Her parents were initially hesitant about the location, but Adelina's excitement and their desire to make her happy won them over. They agreed to host the party at the farmhouse, a place that had been in the family for generations but had stood empty for years. The farmhouse, surrounded by dense woods and isolated from the nearest town, had always given Adelina an eerie feeling. Still, she brushed off her unease, attributing it to the wild stories her grandmother used to tell her about the place. Stories of shadows that moved on their own and whispers that could be heard in the dead of night. On the day of the party, Adelina's friends arrived one by one, each carrying sleeping bags and overnight bags filled with snacks and games. The girls were giddy with excitement, chattering away and exploring the old house. They marveled at the creaky wooden floors, the faded wallpaper, and the antique furniture that seemed frozen in time. As the sun began to set, Adelina's mother called them into the dining room for cake and presents. The room was dimly lit by a chandelier that flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows on the walls. Adelina's father lit the candles on the cake, and everyone sang "Happy Birthday." Adelina blew out the candles with a big smile, wishing for a night full of fun and laughter. After cake, the girls gathered in the living room, spreading out their sleeping bags and setting up a movie to watch. The atmosphere was cozy, filled with laughter and the smell of buttery popcorn. They watched a few movies, played some games, and told ghost stories. When the clock struck midnight, they decided to call it a night and settle into their sleeping bags. As the house grew quiet, Adelina found herself wide awake, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. She glanced around the room and noticed that her friends were already fast asleep. She closed her eyes, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination. A soft creaking sound made her eyes snap open. She looked toward the doorway and saw a shadowy figure standing just beyond the threshold. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The figure was tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. Adelina's breath caught in her throat as the figure slowly moved into the room, gliding silently across the floor. She wanted to scream, to wake her friends, but her voice was trapped in her chest. The figure stopped at the foot of her sleeping bag, its hollow eyes fixed on her. "Who are you?" Adelina managed to whisper, her voice trembling. The figure said nothing, but a cold, eerie whisper filled the room. "Leave this place." Adelina's blood ran cold. She squeezed her eyes shut, hoping it was all just a nightmare. When she opened them again, the figure was gone. She sat up, her body shaking with fear, and looked around the room. Her friends were still asleep, oblivious to the terror she had just experienced. She decided to wake them up, desperate for the comfort of their presence. As she reached out to shake her friend Sarah awake, she noticed something chilling. The windows, which had been closed earlier, were now wide open. A cold breeze blew through the room, carrying with it the faint sound of distant whispers. "Sarah, wake up," Adelina said urgently, shaking her friend. Sarah groaned and slowly opened her eyes. "What's wrong, Adelina?" "There's something in this house," Adelina whispered, her voice shaking. "We need to leave." The other girls began to stir, their groggy expressions turning to concern as they saw the fear in Adelina's eyes. They quickly packed up their things, and Adelina's parents, alarmed by the sudden commotion, helped them gather their belongings. As they hurried out of the house, Adelina glanced back at the farmhouse. She saw the shadowy figure standing in the upstairs window, watching them leave. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as if the house itself was trying to communicate a warning. They drove back to town in silence, the girls huddled together in the back seat. Adelina's parents tried to reassure them, but the fear lingered long after they reached the safety of their home. In the days that followed, Adelina couldn't shake the feeling that the farmhouse was still watching her, its shadowy figure haunting her dreams. She vowed never to return, and the old family farmhouse was left to stand empty once more, its secrets buried in the darkness.